So that is how replacement theory made it to America, and it has slowly crept into our society, first on the fringes, then in some cases into mainstream politics.
Some Republican conservatives have used elements of the theory in remarks and tweets, helping to push the hate messaging in the theory. To see how America can combat any expansion of replacement theory, we put together a panel of former Republicans who have not only condemned the theory, but have also turned their backs on the party. Joining us now, Serge Thomas, a lifelong Republican who left the party to work on the Biden campaign; Beth Fukumoto, another former Republican who was chair of the Hawaii Republican Party; and Michael Ongstad, a Republican turned independent who is now the communications director at the Renew America movement, a cross-partisan nonprofit organization that focuses on countering political extremism and restoring a common sense coalition. Serge, Beth, Michael, thank you all for being here for this very important discussion. Serge, I want to start with you. When you heard about the massacre in Buffalo last week and heard that replacement theory was involved, what were your first thoughts?
I saw that it was something that was very tragic and most unfortunate, and I knew that at some point a political angle, which was dangling out there like a participle, would come into being. You had people simply just going to the store on a weekend, doing what most Americans would do, and you have a person coming in military gear and just shooting up the place. And now there's, a terrible loss of life, a terrible loss of security. And my heart and prayers go out to the people of Buffalo, because they did not necessarily need to have this happen. And to see this happen in a different setting from what happened in Charleston to what happened in Pittsburgh and other places in between is there's a problem. Just in short, there's a serious problem.
And how much currency do you think this replacement theory has in the Republican Party? Is this still a fringe element, or is this gaining more traction?
There used to be a saying about, the lunatics are the fringe. Well, I think the lunatics and the GOP are now the mainstream. So this has huge coin, and it seems if you want to have any relevance in Republican circles in the various states, maybe even in the party nationally, yet some elements of this would have to be a part of your communication strategy.
For a lot of people, including myself, I will admit, I hadn't even heard of replacement theory until this happened. And now I can't go anywhere on social media without seeing it. So, Michael, I want to go to you. Can you react to that? That his saying that it's not necessarily just on the fringe anymore. It's mainstream.
I think Serge is absolutely right. Unfortunately, we have seen this become a growing part of the Republican Party. It's not officially on the platform yet, but at some point we're in a direction where it could be. And what's alarming is that the way you can tell how much cachet it has with the Republican Party is by what senior leaders in the Republican Party do, what even the quote-unquote establishment do. And you will see them not necessarily espouse replacement theory themselves, although, as you mentioned, the package, at least Stefanik, absolutely has in political advertisements. But you see them look the other way. You see them excuse it, and you see them deny it, but not repudiate it, right? So they'll go up and they'll say, well, this isn't actually a thing. This isn't really a problem. But they won't say, this is a problem, and hey, by the way, you backbenchers in our party, cut it out or get out. And because of that, you can tell this actually controls them. They know they can't denounce this type of bigotry and conspiracy theory without facing the backlash from their base, which means that the base is quite large at this point.
Definitely so. Beth, I want to turn to you now. Extremist philosophies are not new. So what impact has technology in particular had on the growth of these ideas in general and as it pertains to replacement theory?
Yeah, so in 2018, when I started speaking out more about this, I was surprised by how much power social media had. And I really shouldn't have been surprised because I use social media a lot. But I had said something and released a very racist letter that I got. And the immediate reaction on social media was from this sort of group of white nationalists that to spread this letter and to call me fake and all this other, to try to disprove that this was a real letter. And then it snowballed from there into actual death threats and phone calls and an actual fear for myself and my family. And so I think social media has allowed these things to just light on fire and to spread so quickly that it's really hard to react to it.
And what makes it even harder is this world of misinformation that we live in. So once someone sees it on social media, they're automatically sharing it, not really learning about it, and of course not having the conversations like we're having today. But Serge, I want to get back to you. So much of this theory is rooted in immigration, and clearly its supporters have forgotten that we are a nation of immigrants. If both political parties would have taken immigration reform more seriously, what are the chances that this theory could have remained on the fringe?
Well, even if you did pass comprehensive immigration reform, which I do still think it's a great need, you're still going to have an X amount of Americans, numbering in the millions, who would still espouse this theory. However, it would not be as prominent as people would believe, but it would still be out there, because there is a significant element of the Republican Party which is rooted in this nativist, xenophobic ideology, and they're relentless in their broadcasting of it, and they're relentless in trying to achieve political goals off of it. And they must be combated, because what they're doing is literally ripping at the fabric of the American experience. And if they continue to rip at that fabric long enough, they'll simply just tear it apart. We can't allow them to do that.
All right, after the break, we're going to continue this discussion with our three panelists on what we can do to curb replacement theory. We'll be right back, guys. See you in a couple minutes. All right, welcome back to Morning Rush's panel on the growing threat of replacement theory in America. Here to continue our discussion is Serge, Beth, and Michael. Once again, thank you all for joining us. And I want to say this is a full conversation, so if one of you says something and the other wants to kind of jump in and join the conversation, feel free to do that. But Beth, I want to start with you after this break. Why did you leave the Republican Party? What was the final straw, I guess?
The final straw for me was that I had been uncomfortable for a while, and I had started to sort of fight the rhetoric that I was sensing was getting worse. And the final straw for me was that I spoke at the Hawaii Women's March, and at the time was the only woman of color to have a position of leadership in a state legislature. And for me, I felt like after Donald Trump got elected, I was one of the few people with a voice and a microphone that had to condemn what was happening. And I found very quickly that even the people that had once sort of at least denied that that was what the Republican Party was and spoke out against Trump had suddenly just become silent and decided, well, he's the president now and we have to follow him no matter what. And so when I spoke at the Women's March, I very quickly received calls for myself to resign. And again, these sort of like threatening phone calls and other things, but also from within the Republican Party of people saying, eventually, either you shut up and you can stay in your leadership position and we're going to keep promoting you, or if you want to keep doing this, we're going to either kick you out or we're going to silence you. And so for me, it just wasn't worth, trying to have that career building and stop talking about this, because this is so important, and what's happened to the Republican Party is tragic, and we need people to keep speaking out about it.
And Mike, I want to turn back to you. As far as the great replacement theory goes, this is a fringe concept, or I guess it was a fringe concept, getting more into the mainstream now, that has popped up mainly in right-wing circles. We have TV hosts like Tucker Carlson peddling the theory, of course. What is the solution here for the party? Like, what would the Republican Party need to do to win you back, if that's even possible?
Well, it's a great question if they could win me back. I'll just jump back to something Beth said that I think is important. It is, in some ways you ask people like me, when did you leave the party? And a common refrain is, I didn't leave the party left me. But it's actually more extreme than that. The party's kicking people like me and like Beth out, because they're saying you don't have a place here if you don't bend the knee, if you don't at least wink and nod or look the other way at great replacement theory or other conspiracy theories that are driving QAnon, et cetera, that are driving the Republican base right now. So, to get me back, I'd like to think that I'm gettable, but I don't think they're up to the challenge, because what it will take is it'll take a Kevin McCarthy, who I've lost all respect for, standing up and saying, hey, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Boebert, Gates, Biggs, all of these terrible Republican members of Congress who help push and espouse these conspiracy theories, or at least mainstream them. Take Kevin McCarthy, Mitch McConnell, people like that, reasserting control and saying, this doesn't have a place in our party. People like Mike Ongstad are welcome back, and all the MTGs, all the radicals, all the extremists, get in line or get out. But they found the power, and Donald Trump channeled that power in 2016. He's going to try and channel that power again in 2024. I'm sure of it. They're channeling it in 2022, and it's been largely successful. So until they lose and lose badly, I don't think they're likely to do that.
So, Mike, I want to get to you as a black man living in America right now and a long-time, Serge, I'm sorry, long-time Republican. How difficult is it for you to understand how...
There's a lot of panelists. There's a lot of panelists.
Listen, we got a lot of names, okay, Serge, my bad. But how difficult is it for you to understand how the party you grew up with could adopt aspects of this theory?
Well, I often read history books, so it's really not that hard to understand that the Republican Party, really since the end of Reconstruction, and even since the Eisenhower presidency in the 1950s, has always had trouble around issues of civil rights and human rights and diversity. But there was always a very strong element in the party, from the Jackie Robinsons to the Edward Brooks to the Clifford cases, and most recently up to Mitt Romney, of people being in that tradition of standing up for civil rights and for democracy. And so for me, like Beth, I mean, there is no way that I could be back in the Republican Party. It is a party of authoritarianism. It is anti-democratic, small d, and they basically just don't like this multicultural, multi-ethnic nation that is the United States of America. And that multicultural, multi-ethnic nation isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So they're just basically raging against the wind.
So if I could jump in here, I think it's that. Yeah, I think for me it was that I was recruited because they told me that they were trying something different, that they wanted. I was standing at RNC podiums announcing initiatives to bring in more people of color and to change the makeup of the Republican Party to better reflect the United States and where we were going. And for me, it was the minute they realized they could win with a different message by not having to do that, they took that chance. And so like Serge, I feel very, very much like they've already lost me, and they've proven to me that it doesn't actually matter to them. They just want to win.
So what can they do? This is just for all of you. Feel free to jump in. What can the Republican Party do to change the course, to distance themselves from things like replacement theory, claiming that the last election was rigged, which it clearly was not? What do they need to do to win over people like you, to get people like you back in the party and win over voters that are kind of turned off by all of this?
I'll jump in. I mean, I think,
I think Mike said a lot of
that. Was a bad idea. That was a bad idea. Mike, start with you.
I'll just say quickly, I think that the 2022 elections are you put your money where your mouth is during the campaign. What do you campaign on, and what do the senior leaders who make the backroom plays campaign on? You see them kind of make those plays to get rid of someone like Madison Cawthorn, but not to get rid of someone like Andy Biggs, who is an out-and-out white nationalist. His own children have denounced him for it, but they still defend him because he's a safe red seat rather than challenging him in primaries. But you see more reasonable Republicans like a Liz Cheney face a Republican primary challenge to get rid of her that will, unfortunately likely be successful. And so, if they want to change my feeling on them, they have to change how they approach principled leaders in their party who denounce this junk. And they have to start supporting them and opposing the people who promote it.
And Beth, Serge, I want to get both of your thoughts as well. Just 30 seconds. Beth, start with you.
Yeah, I think there has to be some real soul searching, and I would really need to believe. I do think that they can't win me back, but because I've made other decisions and I did join the Democratic Party. But I think that what I would need to see is a lot of soul searching and a willingness to lose some races, because they'll lose a lot of their base, but a willingness to lose some to be able to fix what's been broken.
And Serge, have they lost you?
They have lost me, but I think for their own future as a viable party in the country, they need to have a modern-day William F. Buckley basically read the modern-day John Birch out of the party, like he did in the National Review in 1955. Unfortunately, that person doesn't exist anymore. It's a party that's enthralled with Sean Hannity, it's enthralled with Tucker Carlson, it's enthralled with Laura Ingraham and other people within the media sphere, and the Marjorie Taylor Greens and Paul Gosars, as well as the Lauren Boeberts of the world. They've made their bed, they have to lie in it, but I just hope that one day William F. Buckley, like Figure Cut, rises up and says, enough. It's time for you guys to go.
All right, Serge, Beth, and Michael, thank you all so much for participating in our panel. This is a really important conversation that needs to be had, so we appreciate all of you being here. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.